Perfect. Throughout these couple of minutes, I have been developed this agenda that I will be introducing the problem statement. I will give you an overview of how I ended up with this model and how I drafted my current approach. I'm going to also introduce the town of Miami Lakes and the government staff. I'm going to talk about the methods and how I executed my particular model to evaluate the quality of life. And I'm going to finally be sharing with you, everyone, the analysis, the findings, and my conclusions as the next steps. How I ended up within this particular research, right? So that's the main question. So right now, the public employees are in the first battle front, trying to figure out how to mitigate 21st century challenges, right? So they're trying to come with solutions for climate change adaptation, even pandemics, economic crisis, social crisis, you can name it. So they work on a daily basis looking solutions to mitigate these challenges. Now, the main problem that I have found is that when they do these decisions is based solely on a professional experience rather than a combination of data and the professional experience that they have. My proposal for both my professional experience within the town of Miami Lakes and also for purposes of this research is that first, this research opened my eyes to be able to draft a new planning process, to be able to have a more rich information when doing decision-making processes for solutions to mitigate these challenges that I currently mentioned. But for purposes of this research, I was proposing as well to evaluate how the current quality of life for the residents of the town of Miami Lakes, now taking an historical approach of all the decisions that the local government has done throughout these couple of years. For purposes of my research, my project, and as well as the methods that I use, I decided to use indicators for the sustainability field. And throughout the literature review, I found and I adopted for my research this following definition, which is sustainability is the perception of an individual for their satisfaction within life. And basically, this is the definition that I tied off for the sustainability and the quality of life for the town of Miami Lakes. Now, I have been talking about the town of Miami Lakes, right? But where it is located. The town of Miami Lakes is located in Florida, more particularly in South Florida, as you can see in this picture. We have an amazing location, which includes accessibility to the major two international airports, which are Miami International Airport and the Fort Lauderdale International Airport. As well, we are about 21 miles northwest from the city of Miami. Now, when we talk about the town of Miami Lakes itself, it's about 6.4 square miles. It's about 95% developed already, and the biggest or the greatest land use within the town currently is the single residential homes. I have been talking how our government has taken decisions within the past that has influenced the quality of life of our residents. But who exactly is working within our government? So basically, although we are a small workforce, we have the majority of the most important departments represented within the local force when taking decisions. This will be shown to you all throughout the quality of life outcome. Now, the situation is that, as I explained before, the decisions that the public sector is taking are on a daily basis, but they sadly don't keep track of the quality of life and how their daily decisions affect or influence that quality of life. This slide represents basically months of work. I spent the majority of my time within the first portion of this smart shape form, which is the data collection. So my advisor, Professor Fernando, can tell you all how I spend the majority of the time creating, drafting, and cleaning the layers and the variables that I found. So basically, I explained how I use different indicators from the sustainability field in order to develop the quality of life. But particularly, I use about 14 variables in order to get that accuracy within the model. My 14 variables are represented in here, and they are grouped within an indicator of the sustainability field, and I will be explaining those in a moment. After working with these variables, I was able to get to the point from primary and secondary sources in order to have the data to provide for the model. In this map, you can see how the built environment indicator has its own variables displays, which are grocery stores, schools, bus stops, bicycle infrastructure, sidewalks, doctors, and even parks. Next, we have the national environment indicator. And for this, I used two main variables, which were trees and water. Now, in my following map, you can see social economics. And for this particular map, I use restaurants based on the land use. And finally, I group my two end indicators, which are pollution and risk, within the same map. So for pollution, I have the airport has noise pollution variable, and then I have the highway system, which is including two main variables, which are on noise pollution as well as air quality pollution. And finally, the risk based on proximity to the gas stations. Now, in my following slide, you can see that the next step that I used was data processing. So for data processing, this was very simple. I used a combination of two main software, which were ArcGIS Pro as well as Microsoft Office, to be able to develop my model, but in the same way to share my outcome with you all. The third step is the most congested one and the most challenging one, just because it's the most technical part for my analysis. And within this part of my research, I develop a combination of weighted linear algebra computation, right? So how I did this? First, I developed my index based on the 14 variables that I explained before, and I attached to each single one of them a percentage. On the table on the left, you can see how the 5 major indicators selected for this research are tied up with a different percentage, which end up in 1.1 for my overall model approach. Now, to tell you step by step briefly how I was able to develop my final outcome and map that you will see in the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you really briefly and fast how I was able to execute it, taking an example of the water layer. So you can see in the map how I have two main variables, which are parks and the water itself, but the one that I will be using is water. So after taking the variable of water, cleaning the data and processing the data within ArcGIS, I developed this multiple ring buffer analysis, taking an approach to evaluate the proximity of that resource for the different community members of our town. So through our literature review, I was able to find how far or how close you have to live for the water bodies in order to have the most or the highest amount of benefits. And then I was able to convert that distance on miles, and I did the same for each single variable in order to have a more cohesive approach. So after I have my data, this is a close-up. You can see in here the different groups for the water. I converted that into a raster layer in order to be able to do the calculations at the end. So the raster layer grouped all the different information that I had from the multiple rainbow for analysis, and that's how I ended up with my final map. So my last step, which is the one that I'm doing right now, is data sharing. I am sharing with you all not only the information, but also I will have a report with all the findings and the literature review from my outcome. So all this information combined, all these steps combined, ended up within this outcome. So this is the quality of life for the town of Miami Lakes. And basically here you can see how the majority of the town is between average or high within the quality of life. One of the key aspects in here is that although throughout the research and throughout the whole program that I did at the University of Arizona, I was with my analyst hat, but because I work currently as a planner, I was fighting myself between my planning hat and my analyst hat. So one of the things that I am doing right now is that I am in conversations with the principal town planner, and we are evaluating closely the results of this model. So for example, today we were talking about this, and the 3 pixels that are in the right bottom, which are red and they are together, we were evaluating closely why are they red. So what portion of my variables when in here has a negative, right? So these 3 pixels are within the portion of the town that doesn't have access to public transit, so they don't have bus stops close by. They are really, really close to gas stations. They are close to the highway system. They don't have bicycle infrastructure in close proximity to that area. And a combination of all these variables is that ended up within this portion in that specific location. So that's how I will be moving forward after I am completing this research. Now, my key outcomes from my project, right, is that I was able to visualize how is the current quality of life for the town. So in the map, we were able to see in what portions of the town we have to concentrate the most in order to enhance that quality of life and bring it all together. In the same way, this started a conversation to enhance the current planning process that we have within the town of Miami Lakes. And finally, we can see that although the past decisions has been done solely on professional experience, they went great just because they have a lot of departments represented at the table at that time. Again, I am going to keep working on enhancing the planning process for transportation purposes, and this is something that was solely thanks to this research. My highlight benefits is that I'm going to enrich the process to be able to affect positively the quality of life of our residents, and I'm going to make decisions on a greater approach, which is a combination of data processing and, in the same way, professional experience. And finally, for my next steps, as I explained before, I'm going to keep talking with the principal town planner to evaluate why those portions of the town were a low quality of life. And then in the same way, I'm going to keep working after this program to be able to keep adding more variables to my model in order to enhance the accuracy of my quality of life index. And in the same way, I'm going to use a combination of my 2 hats, which is the analyst hat and the city planning hat, in order to have a more comprehensive approach made solely by me to focus the resources that we have within our local government. Thank you.